You used to hear them everywhere, on rooftops and parking lots, at bus stops, outside grocery stores, right under people's windows. Small, loud, ordinary. So ordinary, most people stopped noticing them. And then, in many places, they started fading away. Not all at once, not dramatically, just quietly. Fewer chirps, fewer flocks, fewer nests tucked into buildings. So what happened? Where did all the sparrows go? Why are they disappearing from so many cities? And what does that say about the places we live? Because this story is not just about one little bird. It's about what happens when a species built for human neighborhoods begins to struggle in the very world we created. First, let's be clear. This video is mainly about the house sparrow. That's the sparrow most people in towns and cities are talking about. The little brown bird that has lived alongside humans for generations. And no, house sparrows have not vanished from Earth. Globally, they are still widespread. In North America, they are still familiar. But in many cities and in several parts of the world, people and researchers have noticed real declines. In Europe, the house sparrow has been one of the biggest losers among common birds over the long term. And in one major US study, researchers found house sparrows were declining in urban areas, while rural numbers stayed relatively stable. That makes this mystery especially interesting, because sparrows are supposed to be good at city life. They eat a wide variety of foods. They live near people. They use buildings for shelter. They've survived in some of the most human-shaped landscapes on Earth. So if even sparrows begin to struggle, something important is changing. The first big clue: cities change faster than sparrows did. A lot of people imagine cities as bird-friendly because there are buildings everywhere. But from a sparrow's point of view, modern cities can be surprisingly hostile. Older neighborhoods had cracks, gaps, vents, eaves, and messy little spaces where birds could nest. Newer buildings are often sealed tight, cleaner, smoother, harder to use. In some places, conservation groups and researchers point to the loss of nesting opportunities as part of the problem. But it's important to be honest. This does not explain everything everywhere. One study in medium-sized cities found urban house sparrow populations were probably not mainly limited by a shortage of cavities alone. So nesting space may matter in some cities, but it's probably only one piece of the puzzle. And that puzzle gets bigger when baby sparrows enter the story. The food problem most people never think about: adult sparrows can eat seeds, scraps, and all kinds of human-associated food. But baby sparrows are different. For the first days of life, nestlings need a diet rich in insects, soft-bodied prey, high-protein food, the kind of fuel fast-growing chicks need. And that may be one of the biggest reasons sparrows struggle in cities. A city can look full of food to us: breadcrumbs, trash, feeders, fast food wrappers. But that does not mean it has the right food for chicks. Several studies have linked urban sparrow problems to poor nestling condition, lower reproductive success, and low availability of invertebrate prey. One study found that invertebrate prey availability limited reproductive success in suburban house sparrows. Another line of research found urban sparrow nestlings often grow worse than rural ones. That means a city may still support adult sparrows for a while, but if too few chicks survive and thrive, the population slowly weakens. And that kind of decline is easy to miss. You don't wake up one morning and see no sparrows. You just get a little less noise each year, a little fewer birds on the sidewalk, a little more silence around the places that used to feel alive. Pollution may be hurting them too. Now add another layer. Urban sparrows don't just face food problems. Some studies suggest they also face higher physiological stress. Research comparing urban and rural sparrows has found signs of increased oxidative stress in city birds, with air pollution and poor diet proposed as likely contributors. Other work has shown that increasing urbanization can be associated with higher stress indicators in juvenile house sparrows. That doesn't mean every city bird is being poisoned to death, but it does mean the urban environment can push birds harder than we assume. And when stress, poor diet, weak chick growth, and reduced breeding success all overlap, small disadvantages start adding up. What about disease? This is where people often want a single villain, a virus, a parasite, one clean explanation, but science usually refuses to be that simple. Some researchers have suggested avian malaria as one possible contributor to urban house sparrow declines. That idea is taken seriously enough to be studied, but the evidence so far does not support the idea that malaria alone explains the declines everywhere. In fact, one 2020 study found no strong effect of malaria infection on the condition measures they tested, and the authors argued that the picture is likely more complex. So disease may be part of the story in some places, but it is probably not the whole story. The most honest answer is still this. Sparrow decline appears to be multifactorial. That means several pressures may be hitting the same bird at the same time. Why this matters more than people think, it's easy to shrug and say, they're just sparrows. But that reaction misses the point. Common birds matter because they are part of everyday ecosystems. When abundant species decline, the loss is not just emotional, it can signal deeper damage to ecological function. BirdLife's reporting on Europe's long-term bird losses makes exactly that point. Losing formerly common species is a warning sign for ecosystems and the services they provide. And house sparrows are important in another way too. They are a kind of ecological messenger. They live where we live. They breed near our walls. They raise chicks in our neighborhoods. If they struggle, that tells us something about air quality, insect life, habitat structure, and the overall health of urban spaces. In other words, when sparrows disappear, the question is not only what happened to the birds, it's also what happened to the city. So, where did all the sparrows go? Some are still here. That's the strange part. They did not vanish everywhere. They did not lose the whole battle. And in some regions, they remain very common. But in many cities, the old balance broke. The buildings changed. The nesting opportunities changed. The insect supply changed. The stress levels changed. The environment became cleaner to our eyes, but not necessarily richer for wildlife. And sparrows, birds that once seemed almost impossible to get rid of, began to slip, quietly, gradually, almost invisibly. That is what makes this story powerful. Not because sparrows are rare everywhere, but because they were once so ordinary that their decline became easy to ignore. Can people help? Yes, at least locally. Researchers and conservation groups often point toward the same practical ideas. More insect-friendly green spaces, less sterile landscaping, more native plants, better nesting opportunities, and urban design that leaves room for wildlife, not just concrete and glass. Because if the problem is a combination of food, habitat, and stress, then the solution is not one magic fix. It's making cities livable again for small wild things. Ending so. Where did all the sparrows go? The truth is, many of them didn't go anywhere dramatic. They were slowly squeezed by a world that changed around them. And maybe that is the most unsettling answer of all. Because when even a bird as adaptable, familiar, and human-associated as the house sparrow begins to decline in cities, it means normal is not always healthy. Sometimes silence is a warning. Sometimes the most ordinary bird tells the biggest story. And sometimes, to understand what's wrong with a city, you only need to notice who stopped singing there. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. And tell me in the comments, have sparrows become rarer where you live, or do you still see them everywhere?